Hey guys, it's Signal, and we're back with another video. We're going to be going through the process of putting a streaming PC together, and also give you guys a little tutorial on how to use the NDI plugin with OBS if you want to turn a spare PC into a streaming PC. This means you do not need a capture card for the streaming PC. Towards the end of the video, I'll show my results with my setup, as well as give some tips and warnings and stuff like that, and I'll also throw timestamps in the description, so feel free to jump around. A few weeks ago, I acquired a PC running a Ryzen 3 2200G, 16GB of RAM at 2400 MHz, an MSI B450 Tomahawk motherboard, a 240GB solid-state drive, a 1TB hard drive, and the power supply is an 80 plus bronze PowerSpec 550W power supply. Sorry I didn't have enough footage of the PC before I upgraded it, so here's some Valorant gameplay that I downloaded straight from my Twitch channel, so this is what my streams are currently looking like with the streaming PC. Ever since I upgraded to the Ryzen 7 3700X from my Ryzen 7 2700X, my 2700X has been kind of just in the closet collecting dust for the past 8 months. So today I decided to put it to some very good use. So for those of you who are interested in my building process, I'll give you a little walkthrough. What was supposed to take me about an hour ended up taking me all day. Nothing went to plan here. I'll get to those parts later. I started by removing the power supply. It's non-modular and frankly just kind of a bad power supply in my opinion. It's a power spec and it's 80 plus bronze certified. It's probably fine, but I want something that looks cleaner. I went ahead and installed my Cooler Master V550 power supply that I had lying around. This power supply has an 80 plus gold efficiency rating and it's semi-modular, so it'll look much cleaner. I'm not a big fan of the case that this PC's in because it has nothing to hide the power supply or excess cables, and cable management in this thing is just kind of a nightmare. I was originally going to use blue cable extensions because the ketchup and mustard cables that are on the power supply look ugly. However, the case just wouldn't hold enough excess cable to make these usable and look good. So after struggle number 1, I removed the CPU cooler. This thing is fine for a 2200G, but I have a spare Wraith Prism cooler, so obviously I'm going to use that one over this. In my experience, the Wraith Prism cooler actually does a pretty good job of keeping the more demanding CPUs cool, such as Ryzen 7 CPUs and Ryzen 9 CPUs, especially for a stock cooler. This cooler came off pretty easily, and thankfully I did not rip the CPU out of the socket while doing so. And my pro tip is you should run the PC and get the CPU warm so the cooler comes off more easily, because sometimes thermal paste is just like cemented onto the cooler. I then went ahead and wiped the thermal paste off the CPU and cooler. Those parts went into the box and into my closet to be forgotten about. Now to swap the CPUs. Here's the Ryzen 2700X. And opening the box shows our Wraith Prism cooler. Time to take the 2200G out. Here it is. Not sure what I'll do with it. Now we will go ahead and install the 2700X into the socket. This is always the part that makes me the most nervous just because of how delicate the pins are on either the CPU or motherboard. In this case, since it's an AM4 processor, the pins are on the CPU. If I were to drop that thing and bend a pin, I would probably kill myself. Thankfully, I saved my own life with this one and installed the processor the right way. Next up is the cooler. This cooler has such an oddly specific way of mounting it, and with how little room I had to push the little metal tabs down with my fingers, this took probably 30 minutes to install when it only should have taken about 3 at the most. And this is like the second or third time I've installed one of those coolers, so I was like frustrated with myself throughout this entire thing. After struggle number 2, I had a headache with the system, but this was really only the beginning of my frustrations. So I'm currently editing this video right now and realizing that the clip you're about to see isn't entirely clear of why this whole project was so frustrating to me, putting it together, the system. And so what was happening is I put the entire thing together thinking that, okay, we're good to go. And I turned it on, and then it would kick on for a split second and then immediately shut off. So my first thought was it was front panel connectors somehow. I've had them create little tiny shorts and just not like work quite right. So double checked those and like redid them and made sure it was absolutely right and tried it again, same problem. So my next thought was, okay, then let's try the power supply because power issue. And so I got one of them little testing things. I got one with my power supply, my EVGA one, and plugged it in. It turned on fine, like it tested fine. And so I was like, okay, I don't think it's the power supply, especially because it worked in a system like 2 days ago. I did nothing to like make it just randomly not work. So I ruled that out in my mind. So then I was like, okay, let's try the CPU now, thinking that I might have damaged the 2700X somehow, either installing it or installing the cooler, and like the pressure on it was like damaged the CPU. And so I take off the cooler, take off the 2700X, put in the 2200G, same issue. So I'm like, okay, it's not the processor. So then I'm like, okay, maybe by some chance, this case is really cheap, maybe by some chance it's shorting the board out somewhere. There's like just one little tiny spot where it's shorting out the board. So I took the entire system apart, took everything out of the case, set the board on a cardboard box, plugged nothing but a stick of RAM, the CPU, and like bare minimum to get a post. Nothing at all. So I was like, okay, let's just try a different power supply. I already have the thing taken apart. It's pretty easy to just try a different power supply at this point. That was it. I threw the power supply back on, and it worked. So I was very frustrated just because, like, now I have to put this entire system back together, and it, like I said, this went from like a 2-hour upgrade at most to taking me literally the entire day. So yeah, it was just not fun. So my frustrations were just like it was all there. So that's the clip that you're about to see. So it turns out that this power supply decided to die on me. This Cooler Master V550 here, because I went ahead and swapped the power supply, and now I gotta turn around and put it back because that one kind of died. So now I gotta redo this entire system because here, I'll show you. It's currently sitting on a table here with just the motherboard, some RAM, the old processor, because initially I thought it was a processor or motherboard issue, but it's not. Thankfully, I would rather have it be a power supply issue if anything else, and I'll talk to Cooler Master, see if I can get that RMA'd. It should still be under warranty. I've had it for a couple of years, but I got a pretty good warranty on it, so it should still be under warranty, but if not, I guess I'll just live with it. But yeah, so now I gotta re-put this entire system back together, and yeah, we'll continue from there. So after putting the entire system back together, I was at last able to throw the GPU in. It's just a GTX 750 I have lying around, and I'm just using it purely for video output. The GPU doesn't really matter for this system, and was able to get it to boot properly. Something I did off camera was swap my gaming PC and streaming PC's SSDs out, because the streaming PC had a 240 gig one and mine was only 120 gig. It was pretty easy to do thanks to my FreeNAS, so all I had to do was wipe the drive and re-image my PC onto it. And you can see how I set up a FreeNAS by clicking the card in the top right corner. So one thing you need to keep in mind now that we are ready for the tutorial part of this video, your gaming PC and streaming PC need to be on the same LAN network, but also they need to be on a 1 gigabit LAN. 100 megabit will not be fast enough for this. You need at least 1 gigabit. And I have a unique situation where the Ethernet ports on my router only go up to 100 megabit, so I solved this by just buying a little Netgear unmanaged 5-port switch off of Amazon for like $15. It was gigabit and everything, so I have both PCs connected to that and then the switch connected to the router, and it works wonderfully. So get that if you don't have gigabit Ethernet on your router. And no, before you ask, this will not work on Wi-Fi either. You need to be wired for both PCs for this to work properly. Wi-Fi is just not fast enough or consistent enough for this. One more thing I forgot to mention about the switches is that if you're using one, make sure it doesn't support 802.3az, also known as Energy Efficient Ethernet. I think it might be going by some other names, but it's some power management thing to make it, use less energy and whatnot. And I guess NDI has some compatibility issues with that. So, however, my switch does support Energy Efficient Ethernet, and I haven't had any issues, so that's just been my experience. Your mileage may vary based on things such as internet speed, so I have a 10 megabit upload connection, so that means I've got plenty of bandwidth to do my streaming stuff. However, if you're on like a 2 megabit upload speed, you're probably not going to have a very great experience just trying to stream in general, regardless of if you have a dedicated PC or not for doing so. So I recommend having at least a 5 megabit upload speed on your internet connection. For a streaming PC, it is recommended you have a good multi-core CPU. 6-8 core is best recommended in my opinion, but you can get away with a quad core if it's fast enough. I'd say i7, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7 territory is what you want. I wouldn't go anything older than 6th gen i7. You can get away with an i5 too, especially the newer ones that have like 6 cores and stuff like that, but I wouldn't go anything lower than that in my opinion. Another thing is you will have to play around with the settings. I'm going to show you guys my settings, but I don't recommend copying them exact unless you have very similar specs to me and a similar upload speed. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and use NDI. So I'll throw up OBS here. You're going to see a loop of myself because I'm recording. But when you hit tools, you'll see a new thing that says NDI output settings, and you'll check this box. It's already checked for me since I've already set this up, and you can give it a name, whatever you want. I just did, it's OBS by default. I just added gaming PC on the end of it, and you'll just hit OK. So then that's all you have to do for the gaming PC. You can set up, you set up all of your normal streaming stuff on the gaming PC. So like I have my banner, my little thing that pops up below my webcam. I have, turning my webcam on and off here, my display, game capture. I have all of that on my gaming PC. However, it's just not doing any of the encoding. If you go to your streaming PC, I'm going to go ahead and hide this because you'll see nothing at first. And you're going to go ahead and right click the little sources box, hit add, and you'll see a new thing called Ndi Source. So just hit OK. Source name, click the little drop down. It will show up. So you're going to click that. Bandwidth, leave it at the highest. Sync, leave it at network. Really the only things you have to change is this, set it to full, and latency mode, you can mess around with this. I was able to get low latency to run fine. So, and then also allow hardware acceleration. Like I said, you might have to play around with those a little bit depending on, it depends on a lot of things. So just kind of play around with it, but that's generally what I've been using and it's worked fine. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And this is what it looks like. You'll see a preview now. You'll probably be wondering why the frame rate looks so low compared to the gaming PC, and the reason it is because I am using RDP connection to the streaming PC. I'm not recording directly from it. It looks fine, trust me. I'm just RDP'd into my streaming PC, so it saves me from having to switch keyboard and mouse around and stuff like that. It's just more convenient. So that's all you have to do as far as setting up NDI goes. So now we'll go into the settings, and this is still on the streaming PC, mind you. So we'll go ahead and go to output, and make sure you have your Twitch account linked if you're streaming to Twitch, whatever, your stream key. Set this output mode to advanced. Make sure the encoder is set to x264. There's really not much point in making a streaming PC if you are just going to turn around and use GPU encoding. Rate control, use CBR. Bitrate, I'm running it at 6K, but there is a reason for that, and Twitch right here has a very helpful guide for what settings you should be using depending on what you are streaming. So it's got one for NVIDIA NVENC if you're using that, and it's got one for x264. We only care about x264 here, so we're going to go for that. And you'll see that they have 1080p 60 FPS listed, high quality, slow motion content. You'll be kind of wondering why, okay, 60 FPS, that's generally for fast motion things. It would make sense to use it for a shooter, right? Why not? Let me stream at 1080p 60. Well, the reason that they don't recommend it is because the bitrate that they allow you to send to their servers is too low to make 1080p 60 FPS look good for shooters. If you're wanting to stream shooters at the best possible quality as of right now, then you're going to want to stream at 900p 60 FPS and use these settings. Most of my stuff is copied straight from this. I stream at 900p 60 FPS. However, there will be a few settings that you're going to want to change depending on, again, on internet speed. So if you don't have at least a 6 megabit upload speed, you'll probably want more than that to stream at this bit rate. Then you're going to obviously want to lower the bit rate, but make sure rate controls CBR. There's no reason to use anything else, just use CBR. Keyframe interval of 2, because that's what Twitch recommends. And then here's the bread and butter of the settings here, because this is going to be what affects your quality versus performance the most. So by default, if you have done OBS on your gaming PC, it's gonna probably be at very fast. So that looks fine. Like it doesn't look super bad, but if you're full screening it on a TV or on a desktop or whatever, you'll notice some things. It's not the prettiest. So what I did is I just went one notch up to faster, tested that for a little bit, noticed that I wasn't dropping any frames. OBS will tell you if you're dropping frames. Then I went to fast, was still running fine, went to medium, still running fine. Then I went ahead and tried slow, and that's where I started to run into some issues. So I was like, okay, medium is about the highest I can get away with here. And medium honestly looks great. Medium looks a lot better than very fast does. Profile, set it to high, higher main really. High looks a little bit better. If you're having issues with high, then just run it at main. Tune, run it at none. There's really not much of a reason to change that. And then the X264 options, just leave blank. Audio tab, just leave all this, the same. 160 is fine. And then audio, I run 48 kilohertz on all my audio devices, so I set the sample rate to match. You might run it at 44.1, you might run it at 48, just kind of depends, play around. You don't have to mess with audio devices on the streaming PC because your gaming PC's packaging all of that into one audio source and sending it over to the streaming PC through NDI. So that's why when I'm talking, you see the little bar down here go off, because it's from my gaming PC and it's carrying over the data. And then video, so this is really the only other important bit. Base resolution, 1080p. You're probably using a 1080p monitor. I would feel bad for you if you're using anything lower than 1080p. So I'm running a 1080p monitor, so I have my base resolution at 1080p, and then the output resolution is 900p, 1600 by 900. You might also see a 1536 by 864. That's close enough, and actually I've heard around on Reddit, I don't know how true this is, that this might be better to use over 1600 by 900 just because the way the encoder works and the way that math works out, 1600 by 900 really isn't easily divisible. So 1536 by 864 is close enough and is also very easy to divide for the encoder. Then downscale filter, this can matter quite a bit. Bicubic is what it's by default, and it looks fine. I've tried this other one. I don't even know how you pronounce this. But I was getting a lot of performance issues running at 36 samples, and it really didn't look that much different anyways. So bicubic is fine, and then set your FPS, either 30 or 60. So since I'm streaming in 60 FPS, I do 60 FPS. And that's really all you need to worry about. Use this Twitch page and whatnot. It'll give you a good starting place. And then at that point, you just kind of play around. It works really great. So that's the video, guys. If you have any questions or corrections, feel free to leave a comment down below or message me on Discord. Follow me on Twitter to get notified of when I live stream, and I'll even show some behind the scenes stuff from time to time. Links to the Netgear switch I bought and the Twitch encoding settings page are also in the description below. Make sure you subscribe if you're new to the channel, as I will be uploading every other Saturday from here on out. See you later, guys. Nowhere to run! Ow. Ow.